whatever you want to do. That's fine. Yeah. Hello and welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined by Naty Berhane to talk about different things to do with the war on Tigray. Naty, as most of you subscribers to this channel will know, is one of the high-profile commentators on Ethiopian politics. And today I thought it would be good if we talked about what he thinks generally about Ethiopian politics and how he has managed to kind of cope up with the situation in Ethiopia, given that he has really been involved in activism and advocacy on the right side. I should add. So before we go into the discussion, I would request that you subscribe and share and like the channel. I say that because I have noticed that a lot of people watch our episodes without subscribing, and that's totally fine. But the one problem with that is that when we post new episodes, you are unlikely to get updates and notifications about that. And there is a kind of a risk that you might be missing out on updates. So if you like what we are trying to do, I would strongly recommend that you subscribe so that every time we upload, you are immediately notified and you get kind of updated, and you are always on the loop as to what we are trying to do here on the channel. So that was a bit of a housekeeping that I needed to do. Otherwise, welcome, Naty. Please say hi to our subscribers and listeners.
Thank you for having me, Tech. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
Great. So, Naty, if you remember I have been thinking about how I should start this interview with you, and I think the one thing that really kind of prompted me to have you on the show was something that I observed about 2 weeks ago when we both appeared on Central Africa TV, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And in the poster that advertised the program, you were described and introduced as an Amhara activist, an ethnic Amhara activist. And the comments, invariably, all the comments you received, and you have shared them, and I have seen them on YouTube as well, people questioning your right to be an ethnic Amhara, people saying that you don't truly represent the Amhara kind of the Amhara, let's say, what would that be? Kind of Amhara voice. You wouldn't be the true representative of Amhara voice. You are a fraud, you are a sellout, and all other kind of adjective that I wouldn't want to use. And that got me wondering how hard it must have been for you to deal with that kind of attack against you, against your right to speak as anything you want, really. So tell me about how it has been for you personally dealing with that kind of attack against you.
Thank you so much, Tech. I usually try to brush it off. They wrote the tagline as Amhara National. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. I was born and raised in Natys. I hardly describe myself as an Amhara, but as an Ethiopian. That's how I have learned it. But my family are, Amhara as they one can get. Having said that, to deal with that kind of attack, usually I don't listen to it. I brush it off because I completely disassociate people who I do believe that they would attack me because of these things. But they even went a little bit further than telling everybody else that I cannot represent Amhara. That's fine if they don't think that I don't represent Amhara. I wouldn't cry about it. But they come personally after you. They just have certain kind of rumors that really involves your personal life, stuff like that. So what I would advise other people, if they fear of attack like this, to completely ignore them, to completely disassociate themselves with them, that would make them powerless. It does rob their power. If you get upset about it, if you even talk about it, they would come after you even more. Having said that, it did tell me the pathetic situation that the country is in, especially the Amhara people are in. They cannot talk about anything else other than what this particular group of, I would call them fascists, extremists, think. If they derive from that, if they talk about something else outside of this extremist group's think, they would be labeled as anything. Therefore, they would choose people who are good people, would choose to stay silent, and they wouldn't benefit even the Amhara people or anybody else for that matter. They appointed themselves as giver and taker of nationalities, ethnicities, citizenship, and that's the biggest problem that Ethiopia is having right now. A certain group of people appointed themselves to give you and I citizenship, to give you and I ethnicity. They label you as whatever they want. They feel like they have a power to tell you who you are and to govern your life. That's the biggest problem. Why people right now, a larger number of people choose to say, I am not an Ethiopian if somebody else dictates who I am.
Yes, that's a good point, Naty. And I personally am aware that you don't identify yourself as a Tigrayan or as an Amhara or as Oromo. You are either kind of an Ethiopian or an individual with his own principles.
Or on paper, an American citizen.
An American citizen, that would be on paper, yeah. But nevertheless connected with Ethiopia. I think that much is undeniable. And you have a non-ethnically affiliated vantage point from which you try to understand the situation in Ethiopia and from which you try to comment. But there is no doubt that when the people invariably attacked you by saying that you are not an Amhara and you're not supposed to say the things that you have been saying if you are a non-Tigrayan, the implication there was that if you were an Amhara, you are supposed to be saying completely different things to the things that you've been saying. That's the implication embedded in there. So tell me, what is it that they expect the typical Amhara voice or the typical Amhara point of view or the typical Amhara argument when it comes to the war on Tigray should be from their point? So I'm using very crude, generic kind of terms here. I'm saying they, but I think there is an understanding between the two of us who I am referring to. I'm referring to the
Absolutely.
people who have attacked you. Yeah,
I do understand. I do understand what you're saying, but the funny thing is, I don't even think they know what an Amhara is supposed to say, what an Amhara position should be. They always want to go to war. They always want to kill somebody. And this ideology, I don't even call it an ideology, but this fear that they created is becoming extremely dangerous even to the Amhara people. You know, Amhara youth don't go to school because they want them to go to war all the time. The Amhara farmers don't farm because they want them to provide food for them and then go and die for them. There is no articulated political ideology that they have. It's always about going to war. It's always about singing songs about war. It's always about this purported, incredibly false, some of them sound like science fiction kind of stories about Amhara and other people. It's all about that. It's very convoluted. So I am expected to spout all that if I need to claim myself as an Amhara, and that's what they expect from the Twayalo, and that's what they expect from a throng of other people who do not speak for them. They created enemies for the Amhara people all around it. Right now, the natural ally of the Amhara people is supposed to be the people of Tigray, because culturally, linguistically, even if you go to Gondar, North Gondar, I don't know if you know it, it's exactly the same people. When I grew up, it used to be said that Gondares are Amharic speaking Tigrayans, because the culture is so similar. But they broke that down now. They want people to fight all the time for this imaginary things that they always talk about, and that's very frustrating to me. You have no idea, but this is what they expect. It's not only me. It's not only from me, but it's from all people who oppose, criticize what they say. They expect them to be these kinds of these kinds of people, warriors, and for the lack of a better word, fascists. That's what they expect you to be, and it's 21st century. It's really difficult for many of us to be like that.
Yeah. Oh well. So I'm going to ask you questions that kind of on the surface are a bit unfair, because I'm going to ask you to try to put yourself in the shoes of some of the people who say that the war on Tigray is in the best interest of Amhara. That if we went full on and try to devastate and totally destroy Tigray, there is some benefit that the Amhara state and the Ethiopian state could kind of get from, because that seems to be the fundamental argument that they are basing everything that they say on, that the total elimination of the TPLF, although we now know that when they say that, they actually mean the total destruction and the total annihilation of the entirety of Tigray. That's what they mean. That there is some benefit to be accrued from that. When they say that, how is it that they think the Amhara state or the Ethiopian state stands to benefit from such adventure? What is the thinking? Like, I'm asking you to try to objectively analyze where they are coming from.
They don't. That's the problem. They usually, for example,
so maybe to give you kind of a perspective, Naty, in the case of Isaiah's supporters, for instance, they believe that a prosperous Tigray is a threat to Eritrea, to the very identity of Eritrea. So they have a vested interest to want to destroy Tigray, which is exactly why they have been trying to destroy Tigray. And also they believe that the very nature of Tigray is the fact that Tigray is in a better position socio-economically is a danger to the state of Eritrea, which is also why they want to bring it down. So I understand objectively.
I think you're being too generous of taking them as thinking people, and they're not thinking. Like, they don't have any articulate positions. They don't have any articulated goal where they want to get. So let's talk about history. Usually their references of history are pop singers. The reason why I'm saying this to you is because there is no deep thinking about how we'll go about to benefit our people. First of all, their goal is, it's not to benefit our people. They don't give a flying freak about the people of Amhara. They don't care about the farmers, and they don't care about anybody else. They don't care about regular people. If they do, in other parts of Ethiopia, for example, if you go to the Oromia region, there are a lot of Amharas who are living there, and every single day they talk about this people being killed, the first people who would rescue the Amhara people who are living in Oromia are not Fano, are not Amhara, but the Oromo neighbors that they have, the Oromo relatives that they have, the people that they have lived with for the very long time. Their rhetoric, however, is creating conflict on purpose with the people of Oromo. So they to put these people in danger. So this is how conflicted they are. You know what I'm saying? It's really difficult for them to have a thought out and articulated position about anything for that matter. It's all emotion, and it inspires by false story. This, like I told you, some of the stories that they tell sounds like science fiction. All right. Now, with the people of Tigray, some of the elites do have personal grudge. Again, they don't care about the people. It's about their personal grudge that they want to exact against certain people in Tigray. So they, with their demented mind, they do believe that in order to exact that revenge, we need to annihilate the entire people, because the entire people is supporting this few people that they hate. And the reason why I'm saying that you're too generous to think that these people are thinking people, analytical people, and they want to do something for their people at the expense of Tigrayans and Oromos, that's being too generous. They don't think like that. Some of them think, I guarantee you, especially the ones on the top, they don't even know how to sign their own name correctly. They're extremely literate. If they're not illiterate, think about it. You heard White, right? When he said that we need to roast these people and eat their flesh like a goat. A thinking person, an analytical person, a person who would care for his own people wouldn't say anything like that. And he's just an example. There is a large number of them who would say this kind of things every single day. Just watch Amhara TV. Now, do the people, the regular people, think like that? I don't believe so. And the evidence to that, if you remember, when TDF came through Amhara region all the way to Naty Berhane, they did it in about 4 weeks. I have been following it about five weeks, or we can say 6. It's a very large area, a long way to do that, right? They have not gotten that far without cooperation of the people. And they did say that they did get full cooperation with the people, because they know that they can speak the language of the regular people. That's the difference between the leadership of Tigrayans and the leadership of the Amhara people. The leadership of Tigrayans do know how to speak the language of the regional people. And these ones are just crazy. So in our discussion, I'll talk about how this came about, why these leaders came to this position where they are in, where they are pushing people into fire. How did it happen? Where did the culture come from? And we'll talk about that. But,
yes,
go ahead.
yes. Yeah, but before we go into that, and that's going to be the main focus of today's discussion, but I would like you to talk about your personal journey as well, because I think many people would find it interesting, because many people will have been in exactly the same position as you have been. I am from Tigray, and I have lost friends, or at least people that I thought were friends before the war started. We are not in speaking terms anymore because of the position that I have taken and because of the position that they have taken. They believe that I am a narrow tribalist who supports a terrorist organization, and I believe that they have been supporting the genocide of my own people. So we are completely diametrically opposed in the position that we have taken, and for that reason, we have lost our friendship. And I would suppose that you would have lost even many more friends, given that you're not kind of integrant in the way that I am. So there is a difference in that respect.
Yeah.
And it's been hard for me, and it must have been many folds as hard for you. So tell me how hard it has been for you and how you have managed to stay sane and to continue being a reasonable and sensible voice on Ethiopian politics.
So with me personally, I have worked with, I know Tigray. I have friends and everything, but it started a little bit before the war in September, when TPLF decided to hold elections, right? And I have written a very long article and long thread on Twitter too, saying that, look, this might not be a good idea, but they do have a legitimate right to do that. And the only person that should hold TPLF accountable is the people of Tigray, not somebody else. And they haven't done anything. They just held election. Yeah, holding election should not be a big deal. If the Ethiopian parliament in Addis, if they were upset about that, just censure them, right? That's this kind of practice happened in Guatemala, here in South America. You just censure them and move on. And because of that, there were a lot of people who were mad at me because I said that. They were really upset with me. That did give me an idea that there is a little bit more than that. You know, the election is just an excuse, you know, to instigate even more stuff. Then I, with your friend William Davison and Martin Plott, we got together, and I have written an article about Eritrean involvement in Ethiopian politics. That did touch some nerve in Asmara, and they were very upset, and they started just calling out my name. I'm very surprised because I didn't think that they would care about somebody who lives in the backwaters of America talking about them. But I did not, you know, I understood that it did touch some nerve. Then the war started. When the war started, I was extremely angry because I knew what would happen, right? And especially when the atrocities came about, it did affect me personally because I have friends, I have I have family. My friends are my family, and I used to be a very fervent Orthodox Christian, and the source of my faith comes from Tigray, right? Everything that I believe in Orthodox Church comes from Tigray, and I see that being destroyed. So there was a video that came out. I used to say things on Twitter that are really crazy. It's not something that an intellectual person should say because I was very angry. So a video came out in Adwa, Eritrean soldiers shooting people, and that drove me crazy. I just didn't know I just didn't know how to handle it. So I have a friend. You and I have common friend, Mahari Kabede, and I called him. And it's been a long time for me since I cried, and I did cry. And he said, "What the hell are you crying for? Do something about it, Naty, do something about it. You have a large follower on Twitter. To talk about what you saw, to talk about what made you angry in a manner that is intelligent, not like what you're doing right now, just insulting everybody else, everybody that moves, but to talk about it in an intelligent manner, to advocate about it, that's the way it can be therapeutic for you, and it helps this thing to stop. Other people I talked to, they cried with me, they sympathized with me, but nobody else has given me this kind of advice. And he did that. He's one of my best friends, and that made me to structure myself. I have to give a certain amount of time for this, at least 3 days a week, to talk about this and to nudge everybody else I know. I live in Washington, D.C. You can see politicians, in every corner if you go to D.C. and talk about it. And it did, to be honest with you, it did help. But like you said, I did lose some friends. I came to realize that they were not friends to begin with. If they want somebody to be thrown into a fire, if they want an old man to be thrown over the cliff, if they want a young girl to be raped, if they want Arab drones to destroy thousands of years of church, they're not my friend to begin with. They were fake friends. So I haven't lost anything. But no, just a couple of people I may have lost, and I don't even consider them that as a loss. I have a very strong sense of that I'm doing right, that what I'm saying is a correct thing to do. I'm speaking for my people. I am an Ethiopian, and every single Ethiopian who lives in that place is my people. So I am speaking for my people. I am doing the right thing. And also I have gained a whole lot more friends. I have gotten you. I replaced the friends that I lost by. So this is how my journey was.
Well, yeah, it's beautiful to know that the sacrifices you have made in terms of losing the people that you thought were your friends, the pain that you have been made to endure from having to deal with the things that we have been dealing with coming out of Tigray, and the stress and all the it's indescribable sometimes, the things that you must have been dealing with have been more than compensated by the feeling that comes from knowing that you are doing the right thing. And I would say that latter feeling is much useful, and is more important than this kind of ephemeral feelings of fake friendships on all that. So that is very reassuring to hear. But nevertheless, I'm not trying to trivialize the loss and the pain. That's a big deal. But there will come a time when we will talk about the things that we have lost by doing the right thing. But Naty, you mentioned about the demented and the deranged thing that some politicians on TV say. And one of the surprises to me has been not so much that they say those things, but that saying those things has an appeal in Ethiopia. I think you would agree with me that almost everywhere there are stupid people, there are dangerous people, there are deranged people who would say exactly the same thing if there was a market for it. And the reason that you don't hear as much deranged stuff in the US, for instance, is not because there are not people like that, but because there is no market for that, there is no incentive for that. And if you do that, you pay a price. And I think that the one problem in Ethiopia is people don't pay a price for saying those things. And my question to you would be, why do you think that is the case? Why is it that you could get away with murder literally in Ethiopia?
So there are certain things that people don't know, you probably haven't noticed, but this is not new for Ethiopia. I'm not talking about 100 years ago, I'm not talking about 600 years ago, I'm talking about less than years ago. This kind of behavior is not new, and it became a culture. I am a student of history. So I have studied these things because it did shock me at the beginning. People saying this kinds of outrageous things and murdering people in a manner that is so barbaric that I never thought that I would see anything like this in Ethiopia. So I tried to study where did this come from, and of course the culture was there, killing people, striking fear in their hearts, and that's the rhetoric. Once you strike fear in somebody else's hearts, and they will fear you, and they don't come and get you. But in the 60s and 70s, during the student revolution, the students were so radicalized, and I wouldn't even call them Marxists, and they became so extremists, and they were exercising kinds of behavior. Berhane Meskel-Redda, the founder of EPRP, a guy who was from your neck of the woods, that's one of the things that he was objecting to. He said, "We're going crazy. We're killing people for no reason. We're starting street fights in the cities, and we're killing people even who have the exact same ideology with us because we just don't agree with the phrases that they use. So we need to stop this." And he and his friend, his name is Getachew Maru, they were arrested. They were not arrested by Dirk. They were arrested by their own people, by their own party. Berhane Meskel-Redda was arrested by the leaders of the party that he founded. So they arrested both of them. Luckily, Berhane Meskel he escaped. Getachew Maru was lucky. He didn't escape. Heck, do you know how they killed him? They killed him. I mean, killing was normal. They dismembered his body and just strew it everywhere to teach the others that if you oppose of what we're saying, this is what we're going to do. So these two men, Berhane Meskel and Getachew, that's all they say. They say that we need to stop killing each other. We need to get out of the town, and we need to do this struggle from the rural areas, not in the cities. So the reason why I brought this up is because the same people who did this to Berhane Meskel and Getachew are the ones who later on founded media organizations like this. They are experienced in this kind of cruelty, in this kinds of rhetoric. And that's exactly what ISAT has been doing for over 10 years. And Dargachos again was part of that. Yes, I know that when people hear what I'm telling you right now, they say that, "Oh, Naty, what about zero question? What about Tasfaya Debesa?" Yes, they were parts of that group too. Just because they were Tigrayans, they were not. That doesn't mean that they were Yes, the location was part of that, and Tasfaya Debasai was tolerated when this happened. However, so was Andargacho Sigis, so was Berhane Negga, and so was so many of them who are advising Abiy Ahmed right now. What I'm telling you is the cruelty comes from then. It grew, through ISAT, and it was normalized in the last 4 years. So it's all connected. It's tolerated. Now, I'm sorry. I had to say this. People who tolerated this then, people like Tasfaya Debasai, for example, he didn't go out and dismember people, but he ended up killing himself because they came for him eventually, right? They know this. People like Andargacho Sige know this, and this is partly why I got very upset with EPRDF. They had Andargacho Sige, and they know all these stories that I'm telling you. They know what he's capable of. They did get Andargacho Sige, but they were treating him the way I don't think he should have been treated. He should have been. They took him to court, and the court sentenced him to death, and that should have been carried out. We wouldn't have been in this kind of situation right now, because these are monsters. These are the same people who approved people like Getachew Maru to be killed and dismembered. So this is what they are doing right now. It's a continuation of those times. We shouldn't be surprised that these things are. I am surprised, but when I rethink about it, we shouldn't be surprised that a political leadership, a political ideology that is being led by these people. You heard of him, Andargacho Sige, saying that we need to be as cruel, as barbarous as we can be, right? It comes from that. So what we need to do, what we need to focus right now is putting it out, not being surprised about it. A lot of people say that, oh, Ethiopia is a country of religion and faith. I don't believe that anymore. I used to, but that's a whole bunch of hokum, because even religious leaders are saying that we need to go out and kill people in a manner that is unspeakable.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we have time, we'll talk about how.
I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time of you.
No,
I apologize.
I like it. I like it. But if you have time later, we'll talk about how religion has historically been deployed to convince people think that they wouldn't otherwise do. It really gives people motivation to do barbaric and cruel things, and there has been that element in Ethiopia as well. So maybe we'll come back to that. But I think your horrific stories of the dismemberment of people in it will have been in the 1960s and 70s. Yeah, I think those are interesting stories. They give us a window into why. That, for instance, people a couple of months ago burnt Tigrayans alive. When we saw that horrific footage, the reaction was that the kind of the overwhelming reaction was to be in a state of shock, to be at loss for words to explain how and why it is that people burn a human being alive. But if you actually read history and try to understand how human beings behave if they have been pressed in the right dials, if you know how to press the right dials, they could be made to do the most horrific things. And the burning wasn't really because the people who did the burning were uniquely evil. It was because the right circumstances have been created by the people that you mentioned. So I think it's important for people to try to understand when extremely indescribable, extremely cruel things happen, rather than be in a state of shock and rather than kind of condemning the people, it's always helpful to try to understand why, what is enabling these people, what is the kind of giving them the incentive to behave in that kind of demented way. So those were interesting stories. But I think my question to you now, Naty, I don't know how far further back you want to go, but I think maybe you will start from 2018 when Abiy came to power. What went wrong then, and what do you think should have happened then in 2018 if the state of affairs, the really sorry state of affairs we are in today, was to be avoided?
EPRDF screwed up. EPRDF, from the very beginning, they have alienated people who could be forces for good, right? And they elevated people like Abiy Ahmed. They recruited this incredibly self-centered but incredibly illiterate people, because they were usually they take orders. They don't think. They're not thinking people. They just do whatever they tell them to do. They are opportunists. EPRDF has been, TPLF itself, it has been recruiting opportunists, and it has been elevating opportunists. They gave us Abiy Ahmed. They know what kind of person he is. Getachew has said several times that he used to tell them that I don't have any problem with people of Oromo or Amhara or Southerners. They are really easy followers. The problem that I have is with the people of Tigray, because they are politically conscious. They know. He used to tell them that, but they still tolerated that. He told Sabat Naga, he himself said that he wants to be a prime minister, and Sabat Naga told him that you're not capable, you're not intellectual enough to be one. When he told them these kinds of things, of course, could be anecdotal, here and there, they could have done something about it. Not only him, people like Geddu Andargachew. Yes, Geddu used to be a fighter with EPDM, with EPRDF before Derg, but they still could have sidelined him when they realized that, one, he's an opportunist, two, he's incredibly dumb. I swear to you, I am telling you, I don't believe that these people know how to sign their own names. So that's part of the reason why we are in this predicament. And then in 2018, when they elect people, they could have used so many machinations to avoid electing people like Abiy Ahmed. Even then, because they know that he would be brought to this position if they kept voting for him. They declared state of emergency. And during the state of emergency, if you remember, everything was fine. All roads were open. The protests were stopped. Right now, I'm rethinking that they should have extended that state of emergency, instead of saying that, well, we're going to go back to Mekelle. And they didn't believe that the hands of Isaias Afwerki, which he extended through Berhane Nagai and Andargachew and Gimbot Sabat, they didn't believe that it could reach this far, and they should have believed that. They should have known that, but they were so entrenched with their own squabbles, and there were some sort of corruption even between them. They were, again, pushing people away who were demanding reforms. So that happened. After 2018, in the first few months, when they have agreed, right? They made an agreement that everybody else who did anything wrong would be accountable, would be held accountable. When that happened, the first entity, the first group that gave out their own was TPLF, General Confedagno. They should not have done that. If Confedagno is arrested, Abadullah Gameda should have been arrested. Together, everybody else had to give their own first. That should have been in the agreement. So they give this guy, and Abiy Ahmed made a spectacle out of it. If you remember the yellow helicopter, and that swayed people to his side. That gave the people a picture of his strong leader, who is fighting whoever they think their enemy was. So I think they were asleep for a very long time. And they should have understood that Isaias Afwerki, the day Abiy Ahmed went to Asmara, they should have woken up. Well, that's after 2018. But in the 90s, in the 2000, one of the greatest mistakes of Manda Zenawi was not getting Isaias Afwerki. The containment policy spectacularly failed. We wouldn't have been here if that happened, if that containment policy wouldn't be in effect.
Well, that was interesting exposition into what happened in 2018 and what didn't happen and what should have happened and all that. And because of the reasons that you described in considerable detail, we are where we are today. And as much as I wouldn't want to use kind of cliche terms, I think I can't do better than using one. So Ethiopia is on the brink of collapse, as we have been hearing many times. And I think to the extent that phrase is kind of meaningful, it's really the case in Ethiopia. Even today, you could see people crying in Addis Ababa because everything has become unaffordable, even for the relatively wealthy people in Addis. And if life has become unbearable for them, you can only begin to imagine how difficult life must have become to the people in far-off places. Well, in the case of Tigray, it's even difficult to imagine with people dying from starvation and all that. So we are where we are in a very dire state of affairs. What do you think should happen for Ethiopia to stand a chance of getting itself out of the really, really deep, dirty pit?
When just few weeks after this war started, I had a discussion with Reot Media, Teddy Sagai, and one of the things that I said, which I do believe remains true, is Ethiopia will, if Ethiopia remains intact, it would be the only reason would be the power, the geopolitics. The foreign powers wanted to keep it intact. That would be the only reason, not because the people who live in it want it, except a certain segment of it. And that's what's going to happen. The foreign powers to be, they don't want Ethiopia to be 5-4 countries, and they just want to keep Ethiopian state for so many reasons. Some of it sentimental, some of it geopolitical, and some of it also security. Because if Ethiopia gets disintegrated, there will be fighting, and there will be a lot of people, immigrants who are crossing to their countries, and they don't want that. That's the security reason. Sentimental reason is religion and all that, and the geopolitical reason is Ethiopia would remain a strong country if there is Ethiopian state to fight their wars with be it Al-Shabaab or everybody else. So, for that, they just will try to keep it with everything they got. Having said that, the people are getting tired of it. And it breaks my heart. They're still learning a bad lesson. They're not understanding that the reason why inflation is rampant in the country is because there was a stupid war. They don't understand that. They still justify the war, but they still complain about the inflation. They don't understand that those things are correlated. Anyway, they are upset about the group of people. It's really difficult for me to call them government or a party. I just would say that the group of people who are ruling the country, that they are mad at them, and that would grow. The security of the country is going to the brain. The OLA is getting close to the capital. So, considering all this, I would think that two things would happen. One of them is just probably fairly soon, we'll hear an open hostility, war of words between Addis and Asmara. And the second one, I know that a lot of Tigrayans don't like me saying this, but the peace for Ethiopia comes through Mekelle, because the only place that there are calmed, collected, thinking politicians are in Mekelle. They understand the world, they understand the country, they understand the continent, they understand the geopolitics. So it would be on their shoulders again to save the country. I'm not sure about that. I'm not certain, but I do hear that there will be at least some communications will start, roads and telecommunications and internet in the next few, I don't know if it's few weeks or months, but I hear that it's coming. I'm not sure. I welcome it very much. By the way, I don't know if you've seen a tweet that a young lady, her name is Rishan, she has tweeted a speech that Malazir made in parliament, that the only time they sat with Derg and negotiated is a humanitarian. Even Derg did that. The road was open from Addis to Adigrat for humanitarian purpose. Hindered. Even Derg did that. So it's mind-blowing to me that these people survived this long. But I think people are turning. Those who used to be supporting Abiy Ahmed, they are turning against him, and we'll see what will happen. It's really difficult to say anything.
Yes. Well, my unsolicited advice to you, Naty, continue saying what you believe to be true, regardless of whether or not Tigrans or any other group would like it or not. And I'm sure that is how you operate. So my advice is useless in a way. But anyways, you raised many important points today. You raised about how high-profile politicians who kind of command respect in Ethiopia have created the environment of barbarity in Ethiopia, and how they are the ones who could only change the direction that the country is going. And I would love us to explore that further. You also raised an important point with respect to how religion and other institutions have been co-opted into defending and justifying the mass murder, starvation, and generally genocide of Tigrayans. And I would also want us to explore that another time. But I think for today, we have unfortunately run out of time. So we're going to leave it at that. But it was a thoroughly interesting discussion today, Naty, and I'm sure our listeners will find it useful. But I highly appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you're going to be generous with your time next time as well. So
And
that was
anytime,
bye-bye on my part. Yeah, thank you, Naty.